Welcome back to the Sham Unveiled. I'm Stacy Suniga. I apologize. I have not been up to date on these episodes. Been kind of a crazy last couple of weeks as the Trump undoings has had a definite effect on this home. So definitely that's the only trickle down I think we'll ever see that actually works is when he's tearing down and taking away. So been kind of busy with some personal stuff, but I'm back. There's so much that has gone on and I feel like the news has passed us, but maybe not because some of that news is ongoing and ever evolving and changing. But what I wanted to talk about tonight is I had an invitation. I got a phone call a couple of weeks back that said, Stacy, this is so and so from Congressman Gabe Evans' office, and we'd like to invite you to a private meeting about immigration. We think you should be there because you represent a group that this is an important topic to talk about and we'd like to get your opinions. And I said, well, I'm surprised, but certainly I will attend. And they wanted to make sure that, knowing I think my reputation might have preceded me, they wanted to make sure that I could be calm and collected and not angry. So I basically reassured them, yes, I can be an adult in the room. So great, look in your email and we'll send you an invitation. And I waited, and about a day before, I was supposed to meet with Congressman Gabe Evans on April 11th. On April 10th, I got the location, which is 50 miles away. It's fine. I will travel that to be able to have this discussion. And so I went. Friday, April 11th, I went. I had a hard time finding this place. It was very, very obscure and very, very intimidating because it was actually in a developing area, not new, but old, maybe Commerce City type area in between there. And I could not find the address. The G Maps kept saying, you're here, you're here. And I could see nothing. I could see some concrete businesses. Finally, after driving around the block a few times, I saw some people walk into a building that was unfinished, under construction. I don't even think the foundation was in. I think it was sitting on some truck bed or something. No windows, just some vinyl over the windows. Very sketch. But I pulled up, walked in, and I started to see Gabe Evans literature all over the place. So I knew I was at the right place. Very weird, but the right place nonetheless. So very early because I wanted to make sure I found this place, and I'm glad I went early because I may not have found it and had to miss. So I sat there. My first conversation, I knew I was going to be as probably the only liberal in the room. I knew I was going to be inundated with big supporters. It seems like Republicans love town halls or love to meet with people where they're not going to get shouted at. So I totally expected that. But the first conversation I had was with a Latino man who I don't know his age. I'm going to guess late 30s, early 40s. A very nice man. We just started talking, to pass the time, kind of networking. And I can't even remember his name, but it's probably best. I probably wouldn't tell you anyway if I could remember. But this conversation just led in, me, led into, so what do you think about what Trump is doing? Oh, I'm very pleased. A little bit, not surprised, but a little bit disgusting to me. And I said, really, why? And he said, well, I think he's doing what he needs to do and he's doing it well. I said, really? He said, so you're for all of this deportation and all of this loss of, day in court and, not having their rights to trial and innocent before proven guilty type of stuff. He said, no, we got to get these criminals out of here. But not all the people that they're rounding up are criminals, which I think was kind of pretty much the game. I think it was a way to dilute the ever-growing population of brown people. And he said, no, 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 they're criminals. And I said, well, how do you know? And he said, well, because I lead a pastor organization. So this guy claims to be a pastor around a Latino Pastor Association. And as a side gig, I am undercover for ICE. So we have a Denver pastor spouting nonsense to churches, Latino churches, which we know overwhelmingly voted Trump in this very last election, 2024. Spouting more trash and more garbage about the people that they serve. So I was already unnerved, but I'm trying to keep my calm, trying to already practice. Let's be an adult in the room. So this guy's undercover for ICE and helping them to detect people. And I said, well, how do you know that they're criminals? If How do you get your information? And he said, well, he goes, we just know. I didn't know whether this was bullshit. He was kind of making himself bigger than he was, or if this was sadly true. I wanted to throw up there in that moment. And I said, I think this is the ruination of our country. When you take away the rights, it's the rights that we were founded on. I don't care who you are in this country. We were all given that same promise of the Constitution. And he didn't feel it. He didn't feel it. He didn't care. And he just continued to praise the Trump administration. And so about that time, I knew I was kind of cooked. I wasn't going to change his, and I didn't really want to change his mind. It just made me sick. And so I said, well, it was nice meeting you. Walked off, went and sat down. Probably about 20 minutes later, I'm just scrolling through my phone, waiting. I'm a front row person. I was the only person in the front row. Everybody, I think Latinos, like in church, they fill up from the back to the front. That's kind of what was happening here. But Latinos were pouring in, and there was also a local Denver, not the Denver mayor, but a local suburb of Denver mayor was there. And just some people I didn't know, some business people, for the most part, probably 95% in that room was Latino descent. And so pretty soon I see Gabe Evans has walked in and he's talking to people as he's kind of getting crowded as people are happy to be able to speak to him. He's got that nickname of Ghost Gabe. So, he's talking to people, and then his aide comes up to me, and really sweet guy. And he said, Stacy, thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. We were all so pleased that you could make it. And I said, well, thank you for the invitation. This is really, it was heartening to me that an invitation was extended to someone who has differing views. I don't know if they've seen these podcasts, but I shit on Gabe all the time. Shit attracts shit, so I shit on him all the time here. And so he said, we just need to come together as a people, as Americans, and work our problems out. I said, I totally agree, but we're not at the table right now. In fact, the table is being chopped up with an axe, hatchet, chainsaw, or whatever, and we're being left to the dump. He goes, I understand. And just so you know, me and Gabe Evans are not of the same political party, which I thought was interesting. I said, well, of course, this guy needs his job and he's willing to work for a Republican as absurd as Gabe Evans, then yeah, more power to him. But he was a nice guy and he was good to me. So he leaves, say our cordialities, I guess, maybe if that's a word, and he leaves. And then he comes right back with Gabe Evans. And so I see him making the turn to come to the only person sitting in the front row. And I stand up and I say, Congressman Evans, it's very nice to meet you. And he says, hi, how are you, Stacy? It's nice to meet you. And I've never met this man in person. I've talked a lot of trash about him because I don't like what he does. I didn't like what he did. And I didn't like the way he ran his campaign. It was nothing but a bunch of bullshit trash lies. And I've said that here. If you've seen my other episodes, I'm not shy to say that. But puzzled by him, and I thought, okay, he's been coached by his team member here, his aide. And I said, do you know who I am? And he says, yeah, I do. He goes, you're Stacy Suniga. How's Deb? And for those of you that don't know, Deb is my wife. A little surprised he brought her up, or even that anybody knew I had a spouse, male, female, or otherwise. But he asked, and I said, Deb is doing great. So we talked a little bit. He says, well, I'm really glad you're here. I was really looking forward to speaking with you. And, please feel free, very nice to me, feel free to ask any questions. I'm here for that purpose. And I'm really glad to see you. And I said, well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I'm not shy, as you could tell. I'm not a back row girl. I'm sitting in the front row. You would definitely get questions. And he said, great, love to hear it. So then they make their exit because he's being called. He's kind of the man of the room. I sit back down, and not 3 minutes later, Gabe Evans is making his way back towards me, and he plops in to the empty seat right to my left. And we start talking, and he sits there the whole time for probably about a good 15, 20 minutes. We talk before he starts his program. And we talked a little bit about, I said, I'm not happy with the way that this is being handled. We're prosecuting people in this country and not giving due diligence to the rule of law. And the deportations are tragic. And we went into also the cutting of funding for important things like school lunches, just the whole dismantling of the education department. But more than that, cutting funding for school lunches for farmers who grow food, for school districts, for free school lunches for children during the day when we know that's for many that's the only meal they're going to get that day. Just all of these absurd things that we all are seeing happen, right? So I'm bringing it up and I said, this is so inhumane. This doesn't even look like a country that's leading freedom. It looks like we're going into a quick fascist state. Now, Trump would like to think it's a monarchy, but it'll never be that. He might lead us into fascism. He might lead us into an oligarchy rule, which I think is happening. And he graciously listened to me and he says, I understand. But there's a lot going on, but I'm here to learn about things that are going on in your area so that we can work together to make the changes that need to happen, which was a weird comment to me because I never saw Gabe Evans as anything other than uh, spread your cheeks, Trump, because I'm coming in type of guy. And so, anyway, we have a long conversation, and then he's also joined by the Larimer County Sheriff. I'm sorry, names are escaping me. You can look them up. And then Deputy Sheriff from Weld County, who is running to replace Steve Reams, who is the current sheriff in Weld County. They were both there and taking questions along with Gabe Evans. So the program begins, and it was a long program. We were there about 3 hours, with probably about 20, maybe 25 people in the room, and just constant conversation. So Gabe Evans would answer the question. He'd offer it to the sheriffs. They would stand up. A Weld County guy has a lot to say, admits it. He's married to a Latina, I did learn. So that was kind of his connection. And so we talked about things like immigration. Gabe Evans swears that they're only deporting criminals and that they get lists. Well, where do your lists come from? That was asked. We don't know. So how can you validate? How can you verify that the people that you're picking up, if you don't know where those lists are coming from, how can you validate that this person is a criminal? They may be here, I won't even say illegally, may be here without proper documentation because no one's illegal, right? We're all human beings. We all possess this earth because we were put here by, whether you believe in a creator or not, I do. And so I believe we are all put on this earth to travel freely. So that we have these borders and these rules, and yeah, if you are a criminal, keep out. But so anyway, I digress, but they don't know where those lists come from, but they give a list of names. The one complaint about immigration that the sheriffs had, and especially the local, well, hope to be sheriff guy, he does not like the law that says they can't go into a jail. The ICE people can't go into a jail and apprehend an undocumented person and arrest them there and deport them. He thinks that that law needs to be repealed, and he thinks that it causes chaos outside of the jail when people are waiting because they cannot apprehend anybody inside a jail building. They have to wait till they step outside. They don't like the chaos that it creates outside, although I don't know what, they never explain what that chaos is. The chaos of having to handcuff them outside. They think they're going to be waiting to be barricaded by gunmen or something. I don't know. He never made it clear, but he definitely does not like that law. I do like that law, and I'm glad it's in place. And I made comment to that. You can't go in and apprehend him, but when they're released, I'm assuming they've had some kind of hearing, and that is what the law provides. That's the provision of the law, is that you have a hearing, and that they're released. I don't know. No, they were released. I don't know if it was on bond or on cognizance. I still don't like the fact that they wait outside for them. So I think that law needs to go further, but they don't like it at all. So anyway, that was talked about. Highlights for the evening. Gabe Evans claims that if anybody in Weld County or Adams County, anybody within his jurisdiction hears that someone is unjustly being arrested, a normal resident that has committed no crimes and finds themselves in the hands of ICE to call him and let him know, because that's not supposed to happen. He will do his best to take care of it. These were his words. These were his reassurances. Okay. We also talked about funding, knowing that, with CDC now being taken over by brainworms, RFK Jr., brainworms are damaging people because this man has no fucking brain left in his head. All of these grants they're terminating through the CDC that disproportionately affect people of color, and I will say women too. They're terminating grants that were already giving, which is what Trump started to do, right? It was the second thing he did after terminating all of these watchdog positions, because he knew he's going to come in and fucking be a con that he is. He's going to be a criminal. Not smooth at it, but he's going to be a criminal. And so, first thing he did was get rid of the watchdogs that would see him, that would blaze the horn, right? And then second thing he did was started repealing money. Elon Musk he's catching all of this fraud in the savings, which there's another episode, believe me, it's coming. But just say here that we all know that's fucking bullshit. And it's not saving anything. What they're doing is converting it to their company coffers, to their private company coffers. So really, it's not saving, it's converting to personal wealth. But again, that's another episode. So we talked about that, getting medical attention to Latinos who could be here seasonally working or here visiting someone, emergency room, all of that. He swears that he supports it. If you hear of a fund, my best Gabe, if you hear of a fund that has been terminated and you feel that it is causing a problem or is discriminatory in nature, call me. That was his favorite. Call me. Peeps. He won't even come out of the woodwork to say hello, but give him a call. Call me and let me know that this is happening, because I'm a Republican and I have more leeway with Republicans in Washington than anybody does, because I will be more effective because it's a Republican talking to a Republican and I can make it happen. In fact, I have. I have been able to go in and talk to the administration and restore funding in some areas. So, Gabe Evans, you knew what we said. I'm waiting to see where that money is going to be restored. Giving you a call. I'm calling you now. You're going to hear it again. Get the fucking money back. So anyway, there was a lot of that. He wants to save Medicaid. He said that a lot. All the sheriffs, everything. We let us do our jobs, even the sheriffs. Let us do our jobs so that we can save Medicaid. We need to save it. It's so important. Gabe Evans knows that he has one of the largest constituent bases on Medicaid in the state of Colorado. So he's all about saving Medicaid, right? We need to save it. There's people that need it. It provides important resource. We're going to work our asses off to save Medicaid. Okay, I agree with you there. Yes, we need to do everything we can to save Medicaid. He also wants a proper process towards citizenship. He wants to see an expedited pathway towards citizenship so that we don't have the mess that we have right now. And so he swears it's something he's going to work on. He's done some bills. He claims, and I haven't been very up to date lately, but he claims that there were about four bills that he's worked on. Three of them were bipartisan and all passed. One didn't. I don't know what any of these bills are, but he claims that he's working in a bipartisan way and they're getting shit done. Okay, yada yada. So, pretty much that's what it was. There's a lot of conversations. Then they opened up some questions that they had previously. People had come in and I guess had written in. They couldn't make it, maybe, because this was a private affair. All questions about the treatment of Latinos, and so they answered it, I guess, in expected fashion, that, hey, we're with you, we're fighting for you, rah, 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 go team. And so they opened it up by this time there was like three other people in the front row with me. And so they opened it up to questions from people who were in the house. And so I ran. I was the first person up. I was not shy about this at all. In fact, I kind of made that comment and the room kind of chuckled. But I brought up the point that, Mr. Evans, your voting record has been along the lines of supporting every effort. None of it has been good. Every effort of the Trump administration's plan, the president's plan to deport, delete, discriminate against people. You have a voting record that supports that. You're telling us here tonight that you want to support Medicaid. I've not seen you vote for anything that supports Medicaid. Again, you're lock and step with the Trump organization. You tell us that you want to restore funding. You're allowing Trump to usurp. All of you are. You're allowing Democrat, everybody alike is allowing Trump to usurp the power of Congress to handle the purse strings of the nation. You're allowing him and Musk, a foreigner, no less. You're allowing a foreigner from South Africa come in and desecrate and terminate the Constitution by voting lock in step with the Trump administration. You've told us a lot of things that we'd like to hear, and I hope to God that we see you actually do these things. But your actions are not speaking what your mouth is tonight. I says, here we have even more on the horizon, more issues about what about this birthright citizenship crap that Trump wants to be able to deport people who have never had a home other than the United States of America, but because of their generational, the parents are not from here. So first generation people are at risk. He says that's a big problem. And I hope the Supreme Court does not allow that to happen. That is totally, it's against the Constitution. I don't care how you try to spin it. I don't care how you try to make the framework up to say, well, they could have meant this, because you cannot oppose the Constitution on this issue. If you were born here, you have citizenship rights. You are an American. And for him to get rid of birthright citizenship is probably one of the worst things that we've seen. A lot of bad things, but this could be one of the worst things ever, because Americans could be deported to countries where they've never even visited. So this is dangerous. And I'm concerned about your lockstep vote to allow something like that happen. I also brought up the farmers was one. We are an immigrant community in Weld County. You need weld if you want to keep working. You need to do lots of things, but you need weld. Right now, your shit is going to hell in a handbasket because we need workers. And all of this bullshit that Trump, who doesn't know his head from his old asshole half the time, talks about immigrants being this dishonorable workforce. Pick our food. In Weld County, we have agricultural, right? We have farmers who plant corn, who plant sugar beets, all of that kind of stuff. And then we have the beef plants, the cattle ranches, the cattle plants, where we have one in Weld County. There's one in Morgan County, but I'm talking Weld County, a big beef plant. I said, and then we also have lamb plants. Huge agricultural community that relies on these workers. We have dairies with like 1,200 heads of cattle that need to be milked every day. You take away that workforce, that farmer can't do it. Or his American workers, I'm sure, who are supervisors, how are they going to do that? It says you are going to put us all into a third world country status, getting rid of these workers. And I expect nothing less as a Weld County resident than for you to support them. And I says, and let me tell you what, Mr. Evans, Weld County has a long memory. But even more, Weld County Latinos never forget a fucking thing. And I'm going to tell you, in 2006, Ken Buck, former congressman, then was the Weld County District Attorney, had launched a raid on what was then Montfort Beef Plant. It's now JBS, but it was the Montfort Beef Plant. And people were arrested on the job for being illegally in this country, working for a huge American employer, a local cattle baron family, the Montforts, arrested on the job and deported. And that day, kids came home from school and had no parents to greet them because they had all been arrested and deported. And I wanted to bring all this shit up, people, because I wanted all the other Latinos, like, oh, Trump's doing so good, oh, Gabe Evans, da, 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 da. I wanted them to know how this kind of thing hurts people in our community, in the Weld County community, and around the nation, We're not the only agricultural community. But even if not, manufacturing, all of that, everything is just getting so fucked up, right? And so I wanted this to be said. I wanted this to be heard at this meeting. And I said, so we remember that shit. And so when you vote lock and step with all of these things that Trump is putting before you, and you think that money is going to save your damn job, Latinos don't forget, cabron. They don't. We know. We don't have the money. What do we care? We'll vote. And that's where you're going to get hurt. Because no matter how many commercials you have, how many commercials, I didn't say this here, this particular piece, but no matter how many commercials you use lies and you twist the truth and proof text votes or bills to make it sound like there's some criminal, nefarious uh, dealings behind, previous votes of your competitors, it's not going to work. And so he was a little shocked to see me. It was very eloquent, but to the point. And he was a little shocked that, wow, I thought it was nice to her. But he answered, you're right, Stacy. And maybe you and I can work together to make sure that never happens again. He says that rate on the beef plant was unjust, but we got to remember there are criminals here that need to get out. And I said, you know what, Gabe Evans, I appreciate that. But going after drug cartels, going after fentanyl distributors, anybody who's here, people who are hustling people, selling young children for sex or whatever it is, that's not a fight that only Republicans have. Democrats hate that shit too. We do. That is not a one party issue. That is an issue for all of us. And if we really, truly, and you really want to go after all these criminals, we're there with you. We would be in lockstep with you. We would work hand in hand to help you get rid of this crime and this danger to our children, to our families. We're not trying to fight for their rights. Fuck them. We will help you get rid of them. But that's not what's happening, and you know it. How many have you actually detained? Probably a small percentage, very small percentage of the people who are out of this country have ever committed a crime against this country. So that being said, the way that it's going about it's not happening. And so he said, we get the list. They went back to the list, said, we don't know where they come from, but we know that they're criminals. Well, you need to find a way to verify that. Well, we don't have authority over the list. We just have to act. Hence, that's what was followed up with by the sheriffs. And so it seems like, there's going to be excuses, more. I'm going to say what you want to hear. I really, really hoped. I left there feeling I wasn't hopeful at all. I'm not that stupid. But in the chance that he would reach out to someone, and if it's me, fine. But it could be anybody, right? To say, hey, let's find out what's really going on and let's work for this community. That would be great. And so I'm left with a hopeless hope. I don't know, because I know that he lies when he's breathing. And so I kind of had this hopeless hope in my head about what if? What if? And so other people came up and talked after me. A gal was talking about her wanting to get information out to farmers, to people who work in Latino businesses. Could the campaign help him and his team? How do we get questions answered about legal immigration, or if there's complaints? They answered that. And then another gal came up, a very beautiful woman, and she's like, I own 5 Latino businesses. Successful woman. I have started no less than 9 businesses. I currently have 5. She says, and I am involved with a group of Latino business owners who are successful, whether they are selling something or they have a service. It's a beauty parlor, a barbershop, or they're dentists or doctors. We meet together to support each other because we know what an opportunity we have been given here. And we want to be, and we are good Americans, and we are successful Latinos. But you never hear that from the Trump administration. You never hear that from the Trump administration. All you hear is all Latinos are criminals or Latinos or this and that. Why? Why don't we hear about the good stuff? Why do we always have to hear about the bad stuff? There are far more of us here contributing to the society, making a difference, not only to the community, but to the economy. I tell you what, people, I smiled from ear to ear because she is exactly right. And she wasn't mincing her words. And I thought, this is a room full of supporters of Republicans. Good for you, woman. I'm so proud of you. Gabe Evans says, you're right. We should be talking more about, like me. I'm a successful Latino. We should be talking more about, like me. Oh my God. Can't make this shit up, people, right? And so he said, but, the rhetoric seems to be heavily one-sided right now. And it needs to change. I agree with you. It needs to change. And so then I think they took another question after her. I'm sorry, I don't remember. And if that lady happens to ever see this, I apologize. It was so much information, and the conversation was actually very, very good. And he had heard from Latinos what Latinos need, what we expect, and what we want. So he ends up, last point here, he ends up closing, and actually kind of in reflection, because he brought up this really pretty Latina lady again, who said, why are you talking about Latino success? And he says, just like the point you brought up, he goes, the one thing you have to understand about Trump is rough around the edges. We know. Trump will say things that he really maybe doesn't mean. Bullshit. We know that's not true. Stop it, Gabe. And Trump is just Trump. Yeah, we have to agree on that shit too. Trump is shitted Trump. And so he said, we need to trust that even though he's going about things in a way that is disturbing to you or is really offensive, that's who he is. But I believe that in the end, we're all going to be happy and we're all going to be grateful that he took this. We just need to hold on. Well, hold on here, Mr. Evans. It sounds like you're asking us to sacrifice. Why is it always Americans, the middle class and the low income Americans who have to do the sacrificing? But yet him and his rich buddies, and especially that lion Elon Musk, get the fruits of the tree. Why do we have to sacrifice and not pull the fruit? Because they get it. They're not sacrificing. Why is it just us? Because there's more of us? Bullshit. You're not going to find savings, even if they find savings, right? I mean, we know they're lying and exaggerating those numbers. The Doge, if they find savings, what fucking savings do you expect to be given to the American people? Nothing, because if they find any money, they're going to take already money that was funded for things like cancer research and health care and Medicaid, right? And he sits on that committee, by the way. So we really, all the things he said that night, and he keeps voting for this tragic budget bill that pulls all this money out of Medicaid. He will again have appeased Trump by allowing Trump's vision to go through. So, of course, he ended it saying, hey, I know you don't understand Trump. Give it some time. That didn't work for me anyway. And so after it was over, this guy went up to him, and I was going to go thank him again for inviting me, but he looked at me and he said, Stacey, let's keep in touch, because this guy gave me a dirty look. He's like, hey, I'm here. Get your ass out. Anyway, so I said, yeah, we'll be in touch. And then his aide came up and I says, we really need to get him in a town hall. And that's one thing I did tell Gabe when he was sitting next to me is you have the responsibility to face your people. And if there are reasons you're voting, you need to explain it. As I said that to Caraveo too, your predecessor, Yadira Caraveo. You need to explain. If you voted some way and you've pissed people off, maybe there's things that we don't know. Tell us. Was there some awful pork bill that was attached to it, and you just couldn't support that, so you had to turn the whole thing down, throw the baby out with the bathwater? I mean, sometimes it happens, but we won't know unless you tell us. And so I told him, you need to come. And he said, well, if I can get, Gabe Evans actually asked me if I come up there, who could you bring to the table? And I said, we should bring the community to the table. He goes, well, what if we did something like this? You mean talk about immigration or something like that? He goes, yeah, who could you bring? I said, I could bring Latinos. I could bring about 25 off the top of my head, more Latino leaders to talk with you, to give you firsthand information. Also, I could bring some farmers. If you want to talk immigration, you want to talk Latino issues, I could make that happen. And he says, okay, great. No, I haven't heard. It's been a week, which I get. I haven't heard from this administration or I want to hear from this administration. Fuck that. I haven't heard from Gabe, right? Which is this administration, I guess. But I am going to reach out because I told his aide on the way out, we've got to get him into a town hall. We've got to get him in front of people. And he said, Stacy, I agree with you. Send me an email. I'll work on it with you. We'll see what we can get together. So that pretty much ended the night. I left kind of late, a little sketchy part of town, but I had a lot to think about all the way home. And I've been really dwelling on this podcast. And gosh, I hope I remember everything. And so it might have been a little scattered, but that's pretty much what happened that night. And so I know I said a last thing a while ago, but this is for sure the last thing. When I was talking to the guy that I met when I first entered the room, the pastor who is an agent of ICE, some kind of undercover agent for ICE. He said something to me. He said, have you ever read Trump's Art of the Deal? I'm like, oh, I'm so proudly saying no, I never have. But, I think it's been wrongly titled. It should be The Art of the Still, right? Gave him a wink and he's like, oh, okay. Anyway, he talks about in there, Trump says that there's chaos. He likes to create chaos. He'll create chaos over here. He'll create chaos right here. And then some more chaos over here. And get everybody all fired up and frenzied and everything. And then he can see the best path to go. He needs chaos to be able to understand what the right thing is. So, he was kind of advocating what Gabe did. You don't understand the man, but. And I thought, wow, you have really surfed on that Kool-Aid, haven't you? You're trusting this nation that's going to hell in a handbasket to someone who needs chaos to determine what the moral direction is. And I know they got it wrong. Trump has no moral compass. He has no moral direction. And I bring that up because actually that little piece of that conversation escaped me until today. When I was reading an article, I think it was out of the Colorado Sun, that Gabe Evans, they were calling Gabe Evans out on his constant votes to support the Trump administration agenda. And I'll be damned, but he fucking used that story. And I thought, I'll bet this guy talked to him that night. And he thought, I have to remember that. And he used that story almost verbatim to say, you have to understand how the man works. You've got to have chaos, got to have chaos, got to have chaos. And then he's going to find the right path. Well, no fucking Gabe Evans, he's not. And I don't know if you've seen these, Gabe. I imagine, word gets around. I have Republican friends. All of that population's dwindling, unfortunately. But I'm sorry. If you continue to think that the path that this nation is on is right, we have nothing in common. So, let's just kill the bullshit, right? Let's just, we have pulled apart far from each other, that when we can't morally agree, there's no reason to have that connection. So it's heartbreaking, but it's true. I do not want or need people in my life who agree with all of this collapse of the Constitution. I can't, and if you really believe that, and you believe that putting my rights as a Latina, as an LGBTQ plus person, or anything as a woman on the line to get what you wanted, and don't fucking act like it was about eggs. You supported and voted Trump because you knew what he was going to do, and he's doing it. So I can't connect with those people. But I have Republican friends, and I'm sure they're going to see this, and maybe Gabe will see this. And if so, Gabe, usually I work with a lot of politicians, and I usually give one chance with politicians because if they say they hear you, but they vote otherwise, you know what they're about, who they are. People show you who they are not by telling you, they show you. And so hearing that quote again, and I know it's something you picked up, and there's nothing wrong with that, but yeah, your votes are going to be the detriment of you, I'm telling you. And not that I'm thrilled. I wasn't thrilled to have you in office. We have some Democrat candidates that I'm really not so thrilled about either. But you fuck us over, Gabe Evans. Believe me, I'm a Scorpio. You don't want to see the tip of that scorpion tail. Anyway, thank you, people. I know this has now been almost an hour, but I wanted to give you an update on what had happened. I will have more episodes coming here probably within the next few days. Lots to talk about, especially about the Abrego case, a man who was unlawfully sent to El Salvador. Lots of breaking news. Why that story is like turning over on its head every day. So maybe tomorrow I'll find some time. I am trying to catch up on some honeydews, but I'll find some time to kind of talk about that and give, all the updates. It seems like that's old news, but with recent events, happening so quickly, it just keeps it in the limelight. So we'll have some more discussion. Again, thank you for being with me on the Sham Unveiled. I want to really expose through these episodes as much as possible what's going on behind the scenes, behind the rhetoric, behind the lies, behind other facades. And I hope you stay with me. We'll have some more interviews coming up in the future. Please hit like and subscribe to this channel. And I promise I'll be more attentive and keeping you up to date on the news. Thank you. Have a good evening.